Welcome to EPG Pathshala. Today we're going to speak on the module of disasters in public health, which is a part of the course on fields of practice in social work. I'm Surinder Jaswal, professor in the Center for Health and Mental Health in the School of Social Work at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences. This course aims to help you to understand the concept of public health and disasters, understand the different health problems that can occur after disasters, understand the impact of disasters on health system and health services, as well as understand the need for mental health and psychosocial care after disasters. So we find that increasingly the number of disasters in recent times have increased, and one finds that whilst the number of disasters has increased, our part of the world has the most impact of these disasters. Every disaster is followed by death and injuries. People have wounds, people have fractures, there is loss, large amounts of death, not only of people, but you find that cattle, animals, and other deaths also occur immediately after disasters. Besides the loss in terms of to health as well as death in families and to infrastructure, one finds that social reactions and panic follows every disaster because of its unexpected nature. One of the most critical things in public health and disasters is the communicable diseases, which we anticipate because the population is at risk of these communicable diseases because of water, sanitation, and hygiene being affected. Because of infrastructure destruction, you find that water pipes and toilet facilities, etc., get mixed, leading to risks of communicable diseases. We also are concerned about the post-traumatic stress disorders, which follow every disaster because of the great loss of life and other distress that follows a disaster. What we also find is that in certain kinds of disasters, such as droughts, floods, and so on, which may exist over a period of time, certain deficiencies may occur related to nutrition, vitamin, protein, and so on, which can affect the health of the population. So food priorities is a very, very important aspect of public health and disasters too. Besides the loss of people and the damage that happens to infrastructure at large, we are also concerned about the damage that takes place to the health systems and the health infrastructure. The local population, which is also affected by the disaster, is impacted by the disaster as well as it has to respond to the disaster and help during disaster or after the disaster. Now we find that collapse of the health information systems also takes place, leading to loss of data and access to information that is required in order to respond to the disasters. Because of loss of infrastructure and all other facilities being affected, and the great demand that takes place because of the increase in morbidity, that is illness, and mortality, that is death and fatalities, medical supplies that are required, one falls short of those, and there is a greater need, but less access to these facilities, leading to a depletion of medical supplies. And because of the great need of resources, one finds that health financing is a big challenge. Health financing, which for health is always much less than what is required, may get diverted to other domains, resulting in a further lessening of the health finances required during public health response to disasters. Now we find that depending on the nature of the disaster, the number of casualties and injuries varies. Post an earthquake, you find that the number of serious injuries and fatalities or deaths is very, very high. Whereas post a flood, you might find that people are impacted, but the number of fatalities may be much less. The local health services, which provide immediate support, may also be affected because they are also impacted by the disaster. As said earlier, supplies and support from domestic as well as probably other people who can help in from other states or from international sources, humanitarian agencies which respond during disasters, as well as the national disaster management agencies which are mandated to respond post a disaster, may be required to replenish the local services in order to respond adequately to public health needs post-disaster. I must emphasize here that whilst the need for curative services is the most because of the fatalities as well as the injuries that have occurred post-disaster, preventive measures need to also be parallelly planned, because otherwise you will have an increasing number of people who are vulnerable to communicable diseases and other illnesses which can be avoided and which can help the population post-disaster. So we find that as a public health measure post-disasters, we need to respond at three levels. One is the primary level, which is popularly known as primary prevention. This happens in order to prevent the risk of transmission of diseases as well as to promote healthy practices and public health measures in the population which is affected. Secondary prevention, which is identifying those who have been affected and those who can be prevented from being affected further. So this is secondary prevention. And lastly, which all of us are very familiar with, is the tertiary prevention, which is curative care or treatment, where you might require post a disaster that people who are severely injured may require surgery, may require amputation, because in order to prevent what is called further sequelae for people who are affected or injured injured. For example, I would like to give an example here that during the Kutch earthquake, when large number of houses collapsed inward, number of women and people, the elderly sleeping within the houses, they had the house roofs collapse on them, resulting in spinal injuries. Now, people affected by these disasters had to be immediately removed to through mobile ambulances to mobile hospitals in order to do immediate surgeries. Such kind of tertiary prevention is also required. A mass casualty of this nature overwhelms the capacity of the local services in order to respond. Even though every health facility is organized in order to respond to immediate and long-term needs of the population in relation to health, the health services during a disaster or just after the disaster is overwhelmed because of the number of people who have been affected by the disaster. During such phases, what the health services does, or the people from the disaster response team, they bring into effect what is called triage, by which they meet the needs of those who benefit the most, where people who have minor injuries might be attended and disposed of first in order to free the resources to attend to more critical cases later. Also, for triage, the people who have the least chance of survival may be attended to at the last. What is most critical is that we do a health needs assessment in order to identify what requires to be done, when and for whom. In order to do a health needs assessment, to prioritize and plan the resources that are required to respond to the public health needs of the population, it is important that all the stakeholders, whether they are in the government, whether they are in civil society organizations at the local level, the health professionals in the local facilities, sub-centers, health centers and civil hospital and other hospitals are involved, as well as other experts, which could be disaster management experts. These could be people who are heading the local civil society organizations, as I mentioned, as well as probably heads of institutions in the locality are involved because of the repertoire of knowledge that they hold about the population and the possible planning that needs to be done for vulnerable populations and those most at need. After doing the health needs assessment, we make a strategic plan which makes decisions in terms of the capacity of the current system to deal with the needs that have been identified, as well as the need, therefore, for external support and resources and who can provide them. The needs assessment has to be very quick because the people affected by the disaster need to be responded to as quickly as possible. So the needs assessment has to be planned maximum within 3 to 4 days by a multidisciplinary team which comprises of a range of people who have different or differential expertise. This team decides on the magnitude of the impact, what is the nature of the impact, how large is it, whom is it affecting, Who is it who has been affected and needs response? That's the target group. And what are the immediate health priorities that have to be decided or prioritized post the disaster? Now, in the health needs assessment, one of the most critical things that needs to be done is to collect the background details of the population that is affected, and for which we need a socio-demographic profile of the people as well as the geographical location, if it is a terrain which is mountainous, if it is plain, if it is marshy land, in order to make decisions in terms of what is required and how do we need to go about helping there. We also need to understand the possibility of other hazards such as landslides, say post the Kashmir earthquake. We had to be very aware that after the major first earthquake, when the teams went in to help, we had to plan for landslides to see that both the local population as well as the response teams needed to be protected and needed to also factor in the phase that there might be subsequent disasters which take place post the key one, and therefore the nature of resources that are required to respond later to. It's very critical and has been documented increasingly by a large number of national and international documents that interagency coordination for convergence planning needs to be done in order to make the resources that we have go the most. We have to work out the plan for the rapid assessment that is required, set a timeline for the rapid assessment, and estimate the nature of the finances, the logistics and the safety concerns both for the team that's going in as well as for the local population which has been displaced and which might require to be provided shelter within a short period of time. So towards this, certain responsibilities have to be assigned in order to conduct the rapid assessment in an effective manner. What is most critical after a disaster for public health planning is the rapid initial assessment that needs to be done. This rapid initial assessment needs to be done with different sources, and different types of information needs to be collected through different methods. It needs to be done with the population at large, the larger community which has not been affected, with the host government authorities, with the health authorities such as the medical health officer, and the community level people who are available, as well as with humanitarian agencies which may have the expertise as well as earlier information on this particular area. Most often, the information that is collected is on the socio-demographic profile of the displaced population, the needs in terms of what would be the needs of this population, what are the resources that are available, and what are the future prospects for this particular population. One also needs information from the existing medical health services of the health status of the population in order to anticipate what is it that we need to plan for the population in spite of the disaster. That is, there might be ongoing health needs of a population in addition to what is required post-disaster. All this information, whether it is regarding the socio-demographic profile, whether it is regarding the health status of the population, can be mapped with the key stakeholders of the communities that are affected, with the different medical providers in that particular area, civil society organizations, and possibly aid workers who have already reached the place or who have helped in the past. Mapping of the needs by bringing on board the different stakeholders to get different sets of information would be very useful and would be a very, very rapid method of collating this information. One of the most critical things which needs to be planned for a public health response, of course, would be the hospital disaster management plan. This hospital disaster management plan, which is required for tertiary care, needs to be predictable, it needs to be simple, it needs to be flexible, concise, comprehensive, adaptable, and it needs to anticipate the worst case scenario. The hospital disaster plan plans both in terms of the pre-disaster phase, where a plan is available, which is available to all the people who might require it, and training and orientation of the staff needs to be done during the pre-disaster phase itself. During the disaster phase, The chain of command that has been documented in the plan needs to be set into motion to see that the people who have been assigned certain roles and responsibilities when a disaster strikes are put into action. One of the most critical things is tackling the mass casualties that occur. Loss and large loss, unanticipated loss, takes its toll both physically as well as from a psychosocial perspective. One needs to see that tackling of these mass casualties by the health workers needs to be well planned, and they need to be prepared for it. Post-disaster, one needs to be able to review whether the plan that was put into place and which was put into operation during the disaster was able to meet the needs that were the needs that came into being post the disaster, and what were the key gaps that were identified in order to improve the plan, which can now be cleaned up, revised, and put into action for future disasters. Some of the most critical things that need to be planned in health during disasters is how do you manage the patient load. Even normally in our country, most of the health facilities have a fairly high outpatient load as well as an inpatient load. And post-disaster, you would have a very, very high morbidity, that is people who are affected by injuries, wounds, as well as major casualties. In addition to this, people from far-flung areas in the vicinity would require to be brought to the health facilities for care. So ambulance and related services need to be put into action, as well as logistics for coping with the added burden. Managing human resource in terms of availability of those who can help with injuries, wounds, as well as severe losses, and be available to manage all the health and related infrastructure need to be put into place. Some of the most difficult areas which follow a disaster is taking care of the mass casualties, particularly the people, the fatalities, people who have died. People might have died under conditions by which identification of bodies is very, very difficult. The health providers need to help identify dead bodies in order to initiate the processes that are required to dispose of the bodies after that and hand them over also to the families. We also need to see that required lab and other facilities in order to do CBC and other lab functions to identify diseases, in order to identify what needs to be done next, is adequately and quickly done. Set up first aid booths to help those who are affected in the place where they are affected, so that they are not moved out only to the health facilities. Sometimes blood requirement for surgeries which have to be critically initiated at the site of the disaster is required. So one sees that besides managing heavy patient load, identification of dead bodies in order to hand them over to people as well as dispose of them, provide first aid booths, initiate blood camps, we might need to network both with local facilities as well as those at the national and international level to see that that which is required both for provision of services as well as to refer people for most critical facilities can be done immediately. All of us are aware about injuries, wounds, physical effects following a disaster. But what we don't realize is that everybody is also affected by the disaster that takes place, because the disaster is unanticipated and the toll that it takes is very, very heavy. What I'm talking about here is the mental health correlates of any disaster. Because of the loss of near and dear ones, because of the unanticipated nature of the disasters, everybody is affected, and what is popularly called as mental health outcomes results to a greater or lesser degree in everybody. We must also remember that During a disaster, people are affected not only in terms of injuries and wounds, but most people are also displaced from their houses, or they lose places such as the schools, health facilities, or major community domains, resulting in displacement of the population, and the population now may be sheltered in refugee camps or sheltered in other spaces, resulting in a change in their lifestyle, resulting in a lack of basic facilities, amenities such as food, such as housing, availability of clean water for drinking, for bathing, for looking after your personal needs, sanitation and hygiene, as well as because of the need for putting up these camps to house people, people may be separated and not housed as families. This results in a breakage of the social ties between people, and many a time you find that spouses are separated, women are put into one camp, men into another, and this might have a great impact particularly on the elderly and on the younger populations such as children. Post-disaster, many other social correlates result. All of us are aware about that. Because of loss of older population or the productive population, children may be separated from their parents. You might have orphans whose parents have passed away. You might have spouses whose husband or wife has died during the disaster, putting populations at risk of a range of vulnerabilities. It has been reported, as well as research increasingly shows, that post a disaster, the number of abuses, sexual abuse, domestic violence, and other forms of violence increases, particularly towards those who are the most vulnerable and who are dependent on others for shelter, as well as meeting their everyday needs. So we realize that everybody is affected to a lesser or greater degree in terms of mental health and what is also popularly called as psychosocial care. Therefore, it is very, very important that mental health interventions should be planned. Particularly, these interventions need to be locally and culturally relevant and need to be evolved from an understanding of how the local population perceives and understands them. So we need to understand the local terms that people use to refer to the psychosocial care and needs of the population, as well as what are the normal facilities that are used to respond to what is seen as panic, what is seen as shock, anger, trauma, distress. We need to see that we have a close relationship as people who go in to intervene with the local population. We need to understand how the local population perceives us, as well as the nature of the work that we are doing. We need to, in consultation with them, understand the resources that are available and the additional ones that are required in order to respond to the mental health needs of the population, and understand the beliefs that they have about mental illness and psychosocial care. As I said right in the beginning, everybody is affected to a lesser or greater degree by the disaster. So it is important that we don't respond only to those who come forward, but we also screen the general population to identify all those who are affected, because many a time the ones who need the help the most, such as those who are depressed, may be the ones who don't come forward to seek help. Thus, we need to be able to protect by providing shelter and keep the population safe from the traumatic stimuli which has created the mental health problem or the mental illness. We need to see that the survivors are kept away from the site of the destruction, that is where they may have lost a beloved person, and also see that the severely injured people are protected. We need to connect the survivors to the external world, maybe to loved ones, to their family, to daughters, adult daughters and sons in other places, if required, in order to protect them from further distress. And if they are in a position to travel, we need to see if we can move them away to other places where they can be better looked after. And those who require acute care, those who are facing post-traumatic stress, PTSD, or those who are facing severe depression, we need to see that such people are helped to manage their grief, pain, as well as help to start their journey on the way to being to recovery by providing the necessary care. So we find that the impact of disasters on public health and public mental health is enormous. The response that is required must be multi-pronged and coordinated, because the nature of help that is required cannot be provided only by a certain set of stakeholders. It needs to be provided by people with differential expertise, and they need to take into account that which is shared by a range of stakeholders. It is not easy to deal with death and disease, and as I said, both the local health providers as well as the population that is affected, both of them will be affected by the public health and the public mental health impacts. It is therefore critical that a preparedness plan for the disruption of the services is prepared, so that we can control the spread of future infectious diseases which may result from the mass casualties that have taken place post the disaster. Some of the most critical things which we can plan for and which are normally available is planning for adequate food and food that is locally, which is local and locally consumed, to see that nutritional deficiencies are avoided, particularly in the very young, such as the infants, growing children, women who are pregnant, elderly population who may require adequate food and nutrition, as well as the provision of safe drinking water, to see that other illnesses and diseases do not result post the disaster. People, as we can see, are affected by disasters and conflicts and may require psychosocial support and care immediately post the disaster, as well as on a long-term basis, to see that it does not impact on them on a permanent basis or does not result in sequelae which cannot be treated later. Public health in disasters is a very, very critical and important area of work. Most of you would have faced it yourself or would have volunteered and helped in interventions following disasters ranging from fires, floods, earthquakes to the tsunami, which most of us have been involved in. The Government of India has developed various guidelines to help during disasters, both in health as well as psychosocial care, and the National Disaster Management Authority has these guidelines which are available online at the NDMA sites. IFRC and a large number of humanitarian agencies also provide documented material which is freely available on their sites and which you can download and use for help in order to enhance your understanding, so that you are prepared to both respond to the disaster as well as be able to help yourself if you're affected by a disaster. Many thanks.